Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Insight from Illumify Media, where we get the chance to talk to some of the authors who have publicized and published their book through Illumify Media. And today, Bill Eshenbaugh in his book, Up the Shenandoah. And thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here with us.
Good to be with you today. Appreciate it.
Let's start out by just giving some people the idea. Of course, this is a civil war, 1860s, and a lot of your family documents inspired you to write this. But I was interested in the title, and not until I got halfway through the book did I even realize, what did Up the Shenandoah mean? Explain a little bit of that, because it's both geography and it seems like it's symbolism.
There's a lot going on there. As I wrote the book and tried to come up with the right name for it, the Shenandoah River flows in the Shenandoah Valley, of course, in Virginia, and it flows north. It's one of the few rivers in North America that is north flowing. And so the purpose of the Union Army under Grant in 1864 was go up the Shenandoah, meaning go south to Richmond, take the Confederacy capital, and bring this war to an end. I think the troops also occasionally were sitting around going up the Shenandoah, maybe a little bit different meaning is sitting around the fireside, but the real play on words is just we're going south, but we're going up the valley.
I think that's fascinating. And then once it all became clear, I went, oh, yeah, I get it now, finally. Give us a little bit of a quick summary about what the book is like, and then we'll go into some of the specifics after that.
It's a novel, so I was able to use my imagination on dialogue and so forth, but it's based on the actual service of my great-grandfather, Andrew Harvey Eshenbaugh, and my grandfather, William Dixon Eshenbaugh, in the Civil War, and especially in 1864 and 65 when Grant took over and the cavalry was changed from being scouts to being fighting troops. So it's a pretty fearsome year. A lot of this was history handed down by the generations. My father was born in 1892, so he knew his father well, and my grandfather was born 1848. So they covered a lot of the history live. And when I grew up on a farm, we built fence, for example, by hand, and my father and I would work all day together. And he was a great storyteller, I think. So he liked to share family history with me, and so I never got around to long after he was gone really probably trying to dig into it more. But I started doing the family story, and it just flowed for me. Then let's put this in a little bit book form for the family, and let's take it beyond that and found Lumnify, and here we are.
I think sometimes a lot of people say, why do you write a book? And it looks like with all the rich history that you got in your family, in that setting, and all the things they went through and they passed down to you, it's almost, how could you not write that book?
That last connecting link, I'm 83. There's nobody that has any even oral history, let alone written history, that I didn't create because they just didn't do it. Next generation's in their 60s, generally speaking. So if this was going to be saved, it had to be me. And I did a ancestral study through ancestry.com, actually, put together a lot of dates and so forth. But the book just rolled out of that. And I thought, I just need to do this so that my great nieces and great nephews will read it and go, oh my goodness, that's my great 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 grandfather back there, and so forth.
I'm interested always in authors writing a book and saying, how did this change you? Finding out more about your history and then compiling that and putting it in a document that everybody else can share as well.
Well, it made my family come alive. It made me wish I'd have born 100 years sooner. I could have ridden in the war too. A little bit of a romantic view of it. And it gave me the opportunity to flesh out some characters throughout the book, and I may have a sequel because my grandfather actually had a home from Sears and Roebuck in 1890, shipped to Pennsylvania and erected on the farm. Still stands today. It was really a lot of fun to connect the dots and flesh out the people and do the researches that's available today online and different places I could find their history in the military, for example. It brought him to life. And I have photographs of my grandfather, and he was a pretty imposing gentleman, full head of white hair and 6 foot tall and tough as nails, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think in this, it's not just a book about the Civil War, but you take us in there and really let us feel what these people were feeling and the struggles they were going through, their idealism, and then how that got compromised in the reality of war and so on. And that's probably the richness of this book, it seems to me.
Some questions are unanswered because we didn't discuss them, but why does my great grandfather at 37 enlist for 3 years, having already been in 1 year, came back and re-enlisted for 3 years? What's the motivation? Is it the $12 a month? Is it a religious conviction? Is it a racial conviction to help free slaves? I don't know that answer. I try to explore it a little bit around the campfires, and I'm told by some people who have already read the book saying that I did a pretty good job of describing. They could hear the horse clips on the road. They could smell the smells of the animal and the feed in the barn when they walked in there at 4:30 in the morning and things like that. And I will tell you this, my wife published business magazines for 40 years. She has been afflicted by the disease that's caused her eyes to not focus well. So she couldn't read and she couldn't edit for me. And we finally said, you know what? Here's a way for you to read this. We'll blow it up to really a big font. We'll double space it. It'll be a 1,000-page document on 8.5 by 11, and you can read it that way. And so she was able to. I came home one afternoon and she had laid it out and started reading. And she said, "Where did this come from? Did you have a ghostwriter? I've been married to you for 37 years. I didn't know you could write any of this. Where did this dialogue come from?" Came from the heart. That's all I can tell you.
And you've said that's been one of the most satisfying parts of it is that it was recognized as being compelling. It pulls people in.
The morning of our launch in November, I was asked by some of my friends, "How'd you feel about that?" And I said, it made me feel like I was a high school starting quarterback. It's Friday night. Our team is undefeated. We're 9-0. This is the last game of the season. The lights are on. The stands are full. We haven't started a game yet. And this game is on the line for the championship. And that's what I felt like the morning we launched this book. And I don't know. My age. It takes a lot to get that excited. But I was excited about it.
Yeah, and I can see why you would be. What's the most, what was the most, I guess, satisfying thing about writing this book and getting it down?
I just that I could actually get good responses once it was written. I didn't have any concept other than the couple hundred copies I got as part of my contract that maybe I'd ever buy this thing. And I think we sold over 500 copies so far. So I'm happy about that. I'm thrilled with the comments I get back from folks. I guess if you don't like it, you don't say anything to me. But those who I know and who bought this book through a lot of my circles in real estate, I'm still actively involved in selling land and so forth. So I have a number of different circles of networks. I'm getting really great feedback. And that's probably the most satisfactory thing is people saying, wow, in fact, I went to a meeting the other night and I've won a couple of real estate awards in the last year. And one of the young leaders came up to me and said, you're a really hot commodity now between your awards and your book. I said, wow, hot commodity. I don't think that was on my resume anywhere.
Yeah, it's a difficult category to put it in. Yeah,
It is.
what was the most difficult part of writing this book? Because authors go through all kinds of emotions. There must have been some tough times.
Finding an ending was the toughest part for me. Where do I stop? How do I bring it to an end? Nobody dies. I don't want to give away too much of the book, but just finding an ending, finding a good way to bring this book to an end.
Every really good storytelling has an antagonist, and I won't give it all away, but Buckskin was there throughout the entire novel, and you felt that overpresence no matter what as you went through all the rest of what was going on. That must have been something that was very compelling and kept the tension level up there.
It did, and I kept trying to figure out where do we bring him back in. I didn't outline this book. I just started writing. I mean, I'm such a rookie. I just started writing, and so I didn't know where I was going with Buckskin for a while. But yeah, that may have been as challenging as anything. How do I bring him back? How do we get retribution or whatever it's going to take with Buckskin in the book and bring that character to a point?
It was kind of a dual thing because two different tracks going. One of them was the war itself and their response, and the second was this imposing figure who just wouldn't go away who meant harm.
He was lurking all the time, and obviously from some of his other things that went on in his life, he was a bad guy.
And a menacing one too, I think. How do you think that writing this book, well, let me ask first, who's this book for? Because we all have had history classes that have been the most boring things that we've ever been through. But this is so different. How is somebody from this going to really profit?
I think those who enjoy a novel that has a setting of the Civil War era, um, and don't have to be bored with all the facts, minute by minute, actual research, battle facts, and all that kind of thing. I think someone who enjoys the dialogue will really enjoy this book. And this is really flattering, and I think it's an exaggeration, but there's a book here called A Land Remembered, and it's written about Florida families coming to Florida and settling in the state. And I've been told, Bill, this book is right up there with Land Remembered. I said, well, if I make as much money as Smith made on his book, I'll be really happy because they're now making his book into a miniseries here in Tampa as well. So it would be on a parallel. It's just a good story. I think that they want a good read. It's not difficult. People say it tracks well from chapter to chapter. I think that's who it's for. And I actually, here's kind of interesting. One of my events I went to, one of my young friends that I've known for 20, 25 years has a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. He's reading the book to his 9-year-old every night, a chapter or so at a time. And his 9-year-old said, Daddy, can we read 2 chapters tonight? He said, no, we're doing one. And the 12-year-old is in the background saying, can you guys hurry up and finish? I want to read that book from what you've told me about. I mean, that was totally unexpected that a 9 or a 12-year-old would have any interest in my book. I had another friend whose daughter is a senior in college at the University of Florida, big school. She said, Dad, can I get a copy of Bill's book, Mr. Eshenbaugh's book? I want to read it. I've heard you talking about it so much. So I'm just shocked that anybody 9, 12, 20 years old want to read my book, but so I'm happy. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I think we hear so much about the younger generation not wanting to read anymore and not really wanting to do scholastic things very often. And this almost sneaks in history in the form of a story, and it captivates everybody who's in there because you feel like you're kind of a part of this family and what's going on, and you're struggling with the same emotions they are.
In the story of the woman left behind, there's the strong woman running the farm, a house full of kids, isolated out in the middle of nowhere, Western Pennsylvania at the time, still had bear running around in 1850 and a hunt for them. So she's there in 1864. Her husband's off the war, been off one campaign for a year, came back, reenlisted, been gone the whole war. He's close to 40 now. I'm sure she had long nights going, what happens to me if something happens to him? How will I know if something happens to him? How do we communicate, and so forth. And so I tried to do a lot. And her maiden name was Dixon. She had to be a really powerful woman. I'm not sure I made her as strong as I think she might have been because In the next generation, there were three young men with one of her sons as well, with the middle name Dixon. And it came on down to my all the way down to my generation. My brother's middle name was Dixon. So there was a great reverence for her based on using that maiden name so strongly and so prevalently throughout the book. I just can't imagine how strong she had to be.
Kind of a legacy in her own right because of what she did, what she established, what she kept on doing, gritty types of things all through that war and the absence.
And as a youngster, I grew up on the same farm. We've had the same farm since the Revolutionary War. And so we've been there a long time. And I grew up on it, and there were the remains of their old house and barn and well when I was a youngster. My dad eventually cleared it just to provide more land for it because he said he described it as a board house. It didn't have much insulation, and it's just a plain old, go to the sawmill, buy boards, and erect a house. And barn probably was as well insulated as the house, which means not well. But just to survive in that with uh, process of raising your food and in those days, it was tough just to keep the wild animals away from your garden.
There's the very simple things along with the overbearing things of having nobody else there to look around to help to do the kinds of things that need to be done during this time. That must have been lonely.
There were no neighbors within a few miles, I'm sure, but we were one of the first families there, and we actually got our land because an early ancestor was a private in the Revolutionary War, the Continental Army. Continental Congress didn't have a lot of money, so one of their ways of paying soldiers was go, you go way out there, and we'll give you 120 acres as a private. And it took them about 15 years after the Revolutionary War was over to go get it and settle it. But the early 1800s, they arrived and staked it out and started clearing it.
You
But
mentioned too, you alluded to the idea of too, not having very good communication. That's foreign to our day and era now. And they would wait sometimes weeks, sometimes months to hear anything back from the front and what was going on.
an interesting anecdote I found in this research of the family, the 1870, when my great grandfather had come home from the war, he's not in the census in 1870, but he is in 1880. Then I found a quick little article in a Boston newspaper said searching for uh, Andrew Eshenbaugh, last known to be in St. Louis, Missouri, looking for work as a shingle maker, but has left for home, not known whether by boat, by car, or on foot. But if anyone knows his whereabouts, please let me know. And this was by Mrs. Dixon, so she's Miss Dixon. So here she is after the war. He's gone away. I don't know the whole story in that, but here she is trying to find him by putting an ad in the paper in Boston. Goodness, I don't know how many other places she was looking for him. He must have come back because he's there in 1880. But isn't that something? Wouldn't that be just terrifying to be at home and not know?
Oh, yeah. I would think that that would be one of the overbearing things that keeps people awake at night. What's going on? How will I know? How will I ever know until 2, 3, 4 weeks, months afterward that this had happened? Wow. Uh, I always like to ask the authors, what would be different if you had not written this, if you had not relayed this kind of history to people who are going to be reading?
I'm finding so many people feel like they know me so much better. But they know me through real estate, but now they really think they know me now because of this. I had an attorney friend I've known since, oh good grief, 1980, maybe here in Florida, sent me a little email last night saying, Bill, I was really worried about Will going off to war. I was really worried that he's going to be killed in this book, and I don't want him to be killed. And then he said, then I realized if he were killed, you wouldn't be writing this book. Duh, right. So that was kind of funny.
One of those side effects, right? What do you want people to take away after they finish this book? How do you want them to be either changed or think differently because you've shared some of your history?
I want them to appreciate what generationally people went through to make this country great today, what they had to go through. The Civil War was a terrible event. I live here in the South where there's still some sympathizers with the other side of that, but either side had the same takeaways back home. And so I would like for people to understand today that it was really gritty. It was tough. It was tough to make a decision. Why would you go off to war? Is it just simply for $12 a month? Or is there something more compelling to go off to serve on either side? Is it slavery? Who knows exactly what compelled everybody to do it? But to think about it and think about what would you do if you're sitting around with no communications, there's a call to arms. I don't even know how they got the call to arms out, to tell you the truth. But there'd be a call for arms, and you'd go down and you'd sign up, and you'd all ride off together in a couple of weeks or a month later when it was time to go enlist. Think about just that communications and leaving behind a family. How do you ride off and leave 6 or 7 rugrats, as I would call them, hanging around trying to take care of the place? That the oldest you're leaving behind is 14 or 15 years old. You're leaving behind daughters and sons are 1 or 2 years old, and if you don't come back, they're never going to know you. That's all pretty gritty, and it all happened. The most number of casualties we ever had in any war was the Civil War, because both sides were, of course, from the same country, and there was just some awful bloody days like Antietam and the march through the wilderness, this all the way to Richmond. And so it's, to me, is trying to get just a ground level, grassroots understanding of the common guy. These guys are all privates. I don't have any generals or captains or illustrious leaders that were Medal of Honors or anything else. So just understand what happened with the boots on the ground troopers.
As you mentioned, with these characters, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they were really young and experiencing all of this stuff right there in the ugly in front of them.
Yeah, there's a little subchapter or two, and there's one of my great-grandfathers enlisted. He also enlisted in the late ages, as I don't know, 37 or 38 years old now, on leap year day, February 29th, 1864, and he's captured in the wilderness. Probably his first battle, and certainly the first few days he was on the ground in the wilderness, because that's when the campaign started. Shipped to Andersonville, the horrific prison down in Alabama, about Georgia maybe, Andersonville, Georgia, yeah. Shipped there, and by August he's dead of dysentery and starvation. And I know he left behind a big family. I found one of his sons in an orphanage in 1870. So, wow, just the horrors left behind.
Well, if anybody wants to learn a little bit about what it was, and really it was a page turner, because I kept saying, okay, I'm going to read one chapter and then I don't have time to read. Well, wait a minute, I'm going to read one more. Well, I'm going to read one more. And before I quit for the day. And yeah, it turns out to be something amazing in terms of the experience for the reader putting themselves right in that. Where can people get your book?
Just go to Amazon and Up the Shenandoah, or put in my name, Bill Eshenbaugh, and it'll pop up for you. So love to buy a whole bunch of them for Christmas. But I think I'm finding a lot of people. In fact, I'm sitting here today just getting several mailed out to clients of mine. I found that this has been an extremely good tool with clients who may not have ordered one, but reaching out and saying, hey, or future clients even, hey, I just finished something that's totally different than what I do. It's a really new way to introduce myself, or introduce myself back to somebody I haven't heard from in a while. So I'm having a ball with that. That's just, I don't care about selling the books that much in that regard. If I give it to somebody and I get a lot more business out of it as a real estate guy, fantastic, right? So it's a story to tell.
Absolutely. Well, definitely a good read. Thank you for being with us and sharing about Up the Shenandoah, the book that talks about all of the conflict going all the way to Appomattox, the courthouse where, of course, they signed the so-called peace treaty that took care of everything, and the ramifications after that. Good luck on your book. I hope it goes well. And thank you once again for sharing with us. And that's this edition of Insight from Illumify Media, where we get to know the authors and a little bit about what it took to write a book. So until next time, thank you for being with us. Take care.